Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us on channel 347. Now, as we know, education is the pinnacle of our society, where the progression of our young kiddos into adolescence and then also into the working world plays such an important role. Now, recently, a national government made an announcement that they will be cutting the budget that is allocated to teachers. And I thought, let's invite into studio from NAPTOSA, Brother Riedwaan Ahmed, who is the Provincial Chief Executive Officer. And NAPTOSA is the National Professional Teachers Organization for South Africa. Brother Riedwaan, assalamu alaikum, welcome.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Luqman, and shukran for having me.
My absolute pleasure. You know, this is such a worrying concern because that's all that people are talking about now. That's all the community is talking about. That's all our schools are talking about right now, because this is a huge issue and a concern. Right now, our schools are overcrowded. You know, with cutting the budget, it means that this is only going to exacerbate the problem. What is the MTEF process and determination around this problem?
Okay, shukran for that. The MTEF, or what we call the MTEF, is your medium-term expenditure framework.
Okay.
So the head of education, as well as the minister for education in the province, in each province, for example, they would have a determination of the basket of posts once they receive their budget allocation.
Okay.
Now, normally in terms of the MTEF, it should be an 80-20 split, meaning 80% of the budget goes to what we call the COE, the cost of employees, or compensation to employees, and 20%, you know, for your infrastructure and these kind of things.
Okay.
So currently, in terms of the 80%, and you'll hear that the MEC for Education has said, for example, that when they dealt with the COLA, your cost of living adjustment, for the 2024 period, they only received 64% of the budget allocation, meaning that the balance had to come from their own budget. And so they embarked on a process of what we call cost containment measures. So that had a spin-off. And so when we looked at the MTEF consultation with the minister and the head of education for the 2025 basket of posts, the indication was clear that the budget does not allow for the current number of educators that we have in the system, and so there needs to be a reduction in that basket of posts, meaning cutting educators to the amount of 2,407 educators.
That's just in the Western Cape.
That's only in the Western Cape. Yes.
That's a staggering number.
Well,
so, and before you continue, let's put it into context. What is the maybe teacher to learner ratio, so that we have a better understanding of how and this is going to impact that?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, Brother Luqman, you mentioned earlier that we're already sitting with overcrowded classrooms in this particular province. So taking 2,407 educators out of the system will increase what we call the teacher-to-learner ratio. So they have a projected teacher-to-learner ratio, and they're saying it should be 1:36.7, which means for every one teacher, there should be 36 learners.
Currently.
But we know that exactly, yes. But we know that that does not translate into reality within our classrooms.
Definitely not.
We've had people saying to us, they've got 60 learners in a classroom, 58 in a classroom. So the projected teacher to learner ratio, the 1:36.7, clearly in our view does not translate into the reality within our classrooms, and this will result in further overcrowding of classrooms.
You know, I visited a school in Malmesbury a couple of years ago. It's a farm school, but it was established as a scholastic environment. 100 students, you're right, pretty small farm school, but they had 4 teachers, which means teachers had to teach multiple classes, grades, in the same period. You know, the 30-minute periods that we have, multiple classes. Is this a regular occurrence?
Well, it's not a regular occurrence, but you'll find it particularly within our, I think it's urban, rural areas, that is correct, where we have these multi-grade classrooms, and these teachers have to, as you say, you know, juggle between teaching multi-graded classrooms. And one would want to really then have a look at when they issued what is called the staff establishment to these institutions. The Western Cape Education Department is saying that our staff establishments offer 1, pro-poor, and number 2, they will focus on the foundation phase. And so we would like to see, you know, these schools that are impacted by the teacher reduction of posts, in which areas these are most affected. We've seen, for example, in a school in Hermanus, the school is losing 10 teachers. We've got a school in Lotus River losing 7 educators. And so what we are saying is we still want to see, what are the figures, particularly in our rural areas.
So this now beckons the question: when do the schools then receive their, budgets or their staff establishments for 2025? Because if they've made the ruling now that they're looking to reduce teachers for the next year until next financial year, when do they then receive their establishments?
Well, Brother Lukman, shukran. So schools have received their staff establishments on the 30th of August, late Friday afternoon.
Oh gosh.
So they had to now, over the weekend, digest this particular staff establishment. And then on Monday, they obviously had to meet with their staff and inform the staff, look here, we are having a reduction, whether it's 7, 10, 3 or 5 posts. We are aware that there are some schools who have a zero reduction. We must be honest. But 10 teachers and 7, these are the majority numbers of figures that we are looking at. And I'm not sure whether we're going to maybe have an opportunity to speak about it, but when we speak of the 2,407 teachers that are going to be cut, we need to identify that there are 2 categories. Okay. The one will be your contract teacher, and the other one is your permanent educator. One of the questions we are being asked a lot is what is going to happen with retrenchment processes.
Right.
And the Western Cape Education Department has made it clear that no teacher will lose his or her job. But there they are referring to your permanently employed educators. So there's no retrenchment package. Some educators or people might recall some years ago they had this thing called a VSP, a voluntary severance package. There is no such package available because of the cost containment. So they are going to suitably place those permanent educators. But the ones who are on contract, their contracts will terminate by the 31st of December.
When you say contract, people have entered into contract for what, a year, 2 years, 5 years?
That is correct, yes. Well, for a year. But if you occupy a substantive vacant post, there is a collective agreement that says that if you are occupying that post for 3 months or more, then you should become permanent. You should be converted to permanency.
That is our law that is prescribed for any permanent or any employment.
Any employee, that is correct. Besides the exclusions in terms of the provisions of the LRA, but that aside. So what we are saying is that these educators have not been converted to permanent. So now they are contract. And now they stand to lose their jobs come the end of this year.
Okay, so it's just happened. The bombshell has literally dropped. I can only imagine the conversations that are happening within the scholastic environment. But you've been so close and linked to various schools in the Western Cape. What has been some of the feedback from them?
Well, obviously the feedback is, that they are very much unhappy about the current state of affairs. As an organization, NAPTOSA is also very much opposed to the reduction in the number of posts. Another concern raised by our educators, obviously, is the notion of well-being. If one looks at the absenteeism rate within our schools due to the well-being of our educators, we see this can only escalate now. And it can exacerbate the situation. Definitely. I mean, we know if a teacher is absent, if you take them out of the schooling system now, what's going to happen to those classes? Those learners are now subdivided, and a teacher would have normally had 40-odd learners will now sit with 50-odd learners.
Correct.
And so the overcrowding, so there's a whole spin-off of this particular situation, which is very dire in our view.
Yeah. What about specialized education? Will that be affected by the reduction of posts?
Okay, so fortunately, I spoke earlier of the WCD's prioritization. The one is being pro-poor, the other one is foundation phase, and specialized education. So specialized education, fortunately, alhamdulillah, that has not been reduced. So it's only in what we call the mainstream environment that these cuts are going to take place.
Sure. What's the way forward? Obviously, you would like your voice to be heard and various other organizations, but more importantly, the educators that will be possibly losing their jobs as well. What's the way forward?
Well, shukran for that, Brother Lukman. The way forward is that I think quite a number of communities have now gotten together and they are protesting, or there's various protest measures that they are putting in place. As NAPTOSA, as an organization, we obviously move from what we call a mandated position, which means I need a mandate from our members. We've got over 12,000 teachers in this particular province that are our members. And so we are in the process of obtaining a mandate. But what we have done is we have lodged a dispute with the ELRC, that is your Education Labour Relations Council. And our dispute revolves around the enforcement of a collective agreement. Now, the collective agreement that we are referring to is the one that you mentioned earlier, which is the one where the LRA says that you must convert people. You can't keep them temporary for more than 3 months.
Yeah.
Now, that hasn't happened at the pace at which we would have liked it to happen. And so we have now lodged that dispute, and I have just received a notification today that our dispute will be heard on the 3rd of October under the auspices of the ELRC, inshallah. Okay. So that is one of the way forwards. The other one is we've also approached our national office to put pressure on National Treasury, because National Treasury, is sitting with the budget and the funds and having to allocate these. And so we really want to see what is going to happen. We're also aware that the National Council of Education Ministers are meeting, because it appears as if other provinces are also saying that their budgets are also taking strain, although there's been no indication from any other province that there will be a reduction in the posts of educators.
Quick comment before we end. There was talk about possible strike. Educators strike, that what would happen? Is that still on the cards? Can that happen? What are the legalities around that?
Well, look, I mean, with strike action, for example, there are legal compliance issues that has to take place. For example, we have to lodge a formal dispute. They must try and conciliate. Once we deadlock and we cannot reach a resolve, only then would we be able to embark on any strike action. As NAPTOSA, as an organization, and I said it earlier, and that is that we would need to mandate our members to see whether they will be prepared to go out on a strike action. So at the moment, we are waiting for the 3rd of October, inshallah. What we then see is we determine what the outcome would be, of our dispute with the ELRC. And only after that, I think our Provincial Executive Council would then meet in order to determine, whether we would embark on any industrial action.
Okay. Brother Riedwaan Ahmed from NAPTOSA, Jazakallah so much for coming into studio, sharing the relevant information around a very worrying topic. I mean, I bump into people all the time, and that's all that people are talking about. Have you seen what's going on? Have you heard what's going to happen to our kids? So you've given us relevant information. We'd love to do a follow-up at some time as well, so that we can, educate our viewers as well.
Yeah, inshallah, no problem. Shukran jazilan for the opportunity.
That's Brother Riedwaan Ahmed from NAPTOSA, talking about the budget cuts that are on the cards for our educators in South Africa. That's all that we have for you from Hilaal Live. Join us tomorrow between 5 and 7 o'clock. From the Cape Town team, Sohail Barnes, Mohammed Parker, and myself, Luqman Shadrack. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.